Good morning, Tribal Jazzman Scholar. I want to talk about a phenomenon in modern culture that seems to have great popularity, and that's reality television. And some of the features of reality television are remarkably similar to the rite of passage, to the hero myth. It seems to be touching on a universal story, and I think that can constitute part of the popularity of it, and that can attribute the popularity to that. Let me just talk a little bit about the rite of passage. The rite of passage is something that we see in tribal societies throughout the world, and it's something that we assume our ancestors, our own pre-Neolithic ancestors were doing on a regular basis. And it's a transition ritual in which a child becomes an adult. Unlike contemporary Western society where there's this this nebulous adolescent period and we don't quite know when someone's an adult. Is it when they reach puberty? Is it when they get their driver's license? Is it when they legally become able to vote? So it's sort of we have this very, very unclarified period between child and adult that we call adolescence. Now, tribal society doesn't do that, as far as we can tell. Any tribal society that's been studied has a transition ritual that marks the end of childhood and the beginning of adulthood, and it's very, very clear and it's demarcated. And the ritual involves three components. It involves a separation from family, and then a period in which a lot of ordeals are undertaken, and then a transformative response to the ordeals in which they come back to their family, reunited with their family in a celebratory mode of the welcoming of the freshly minted adult. And so separation, transition, ordeals, and then return and reintegration as a transformed individual. And when Joseph Campbell in 1949 wrote Hero with a Thousand Faces, he was gathering these stories from around the world, and he found this story everywhere. He called it the hero's journey. It's where someone leaves the home, undergoes some sort of ordeal, maybe slays a dragon, being the most obvious, and in the process discovers something about themselves or about their world, and is transformed, and then comes back home, transformed, able to give gifts back to the home, to the tribe, to the village, that come from the transformation. So that's the hero's journey, and it's found all over the world, and it also perfectly mirrors the tribal rite of passage. So we kind of assume it's this archetypal story that emerges because it's within all of us, in our psyche. And in my studies of adolescent risk behavior, curiously, what some of the conclusions of some psychologists, a woman, Cynthia Lightfoot, wrote The Culture of Adolescent Risk-Taking. She said a lot of these risks kids take, which seem to be ubiquitous in adolescence across socioeconomic and ethnic lines, the risk behavior in adolescence is largely about being able to tell each other the stories of the ordeals you've undergone, whether it's driving a car at outrageous speeds, drinking a terribly large amount of alcohol, or doing some kind of illegal thing, vandalizing a building, running from the cops, chasing a train, running across the tracks. It's like with kids walking on bridge railings. Kids do these, particularly boys, but they do these very dangerous things that are less about the thing, according to the psychologist, and more about the story that it allows you to tell about yourself. So it's like creating your own hero narrative. It's part of identity formation in adolescence. It's something we don't understand very well and we're not very sympathetic with, but that's for another Tribal Jazzman Scholar episode. I wanted to just say that these very popular reality television shows have striking similarities to the rite of passage, and they are these. They almost uniformly involve the contestants being separated from their families and then isolated together in a hotel or somewhere. Then they undergo frequent ordeals which they know nothing about until the ordeal is upon them. And the ordeals are dangerous in the sense that if you don't do well, instead of dying, you essentially are killed off the show. So you have this risk of losing life, credibility. So it has the feature of being dangerous. It's an ordeal. It's hard. It's challenging. There's a time limit. There's all sorts of unknown obstacles. And here we are, the viewers watching this experience. Here are these people isolated from their families, and they're undergoing ordeals. And then it even culminates with a transformation. Even though one contestant survives, with any kind of a competition, as other teams or other players or other contestants get knocked off, if one of your favorite players disappears from the show or your favorite team gets eliminated from the playoffs, you tend to find a new favorite. So you can continue to identify with the hero. And in the end, in some of these shows, like the home improvement shows or the food shows or the design shows, the contestant who wins gets their own show, gets their own photo spread, gets some sort of indication of real transformation, and then inevitably one of the last episodes has the reunion with the family in celebration, the transformed individual, the new TV host, whatever it might be. So it bears striking resemblance to the rite of passage of adolescence that is ubiquitous in tribal societies throughout the world, that was very likely practiced by 99% of all of our ancestors. It's certainly ingrained enough in us, it's innate enough in us as a story that it expresses itself archetypally in myths and allegory and parables and fairy tales throughout the world. This image of separation, ordeal, transformation, return. That sequence that Joseph Campbell so beautifully illustrated in The Hero with a Thousand Faces. It's represented itself in mass culture as reality television. And that's my take on the popularity of reality television. And with that, Tribal Jazzman Scholar will sign off. Thanks.